what leverage do humans then have over AI?
At the moment, a human still has to control the AI. AI is not going to take over your job. Someone using AI is going to take over your job. So that's still our main leverage point is that we can use our ideas and our, creativity and just essentially make it even better and faster and all these things.
Andro, welcome to the podcast, bro. It's great to have you here. I know that you have probably built one of the most successful and sharpest communities that I've seen online so far. And you speak to people in a way that's very simple and easy to understand, whether it's about client acquisition, whether that's about positioning, or really just figuring out what you should be doing step by step in your business, which I find very, very interesting. And so I feel like you have a very, very clean, intentional, and also philosophical way of teaching, which is something very unique about yourself. So what would you say made you care about the topics that you teach people about and that you help people with? What made you actually care about those topics so deeply in the first place, would you say?
Awesome. Great question to start off with. And thank you for having me on, Elias. It's been great, having you as a friend as well, meeting in Greece for the first time. Yeah, thank you for having me on in the podcast. So, yeah, good question to start off with. I mean, probably the biggest thing that made me want to share all these things that I've learned is just that I went through the same problems myself. So I feel like that's the best business model you can really start is where you go through problems and then you just share your experiences and your solutions to, the rest of the people. Because people think that they are very special in a way, which is also, you kind of want to do with that as you wish, but you are also not special because everyone else is going through similar situations and problems. So people think that they're special, they're the special snowflake that they have these problems that no one else experiences, but millions of people experience the same problem. So if you go through your problems and you solve that, you've got potentially millions of customers whose lives you can also, help by solving their problems. So that's probably the biggest thing that's helped, or start this brand of mine.
Okay, that's interesting. I mean, the way you talk about that sounds like a lot of it for you is about giving back and helping people in the situation that you were in before, right? Really just providing value.
Yeah. So the thing about wealth creation that I like so much is, we make, let's say we solve problems. That's ultimately what entrepreneurship and business really is, right? Is solving problems. If we solve problems, we make money, but we also help our clients make money. So both our incentives are aligned. So that's the cool thing about wealth creation. And, let's say trading or crypto, for example, nothing against that, but it's almost like a status game you're playing. Because if you win, someone else has to lose, right? When it comes to like trading, because if you buy, someone else has to sell at that position. When it comes to wealth creation, I make money through the clients, and then I also help my clients make more money. So both of us are winning.
For sure. I think that's an
Well,
amazing way to make money. Do you feel like, because obviously this is something that people don't really think about when they start making money or trying to make money, do you feel like where you made your money matters? Do you feel like it has a positive or negative impact on your life if you got it from either a good or a bad place?
so what exactly do you mean by like a bad place?
Gambling, running a casino, for example.
Yeah. So I feel like just by evolutionary speaking, you do things that you've been rewarded for in the past. So if you got it in a bad way, you are just going to continue doing that because you've been rewarded in the past for, getting money in a bad way and just, it working for you. So I think all humans are trying to do is just do things that are working for them, right? It doesn't really matter how they got it. So that your past definitely has a outcome on how your future unfolds. So, but yeah, as much as possible, try to make it in a good way. I just feel like you're gonna, you might get away with it, right? But deep down, with your self-esteem and everything like that, you're gonna know deep down, like people know, and you also will know, and you are like your biggest critic.
Sure. I love that. I feel as though when you try to make your first money, you tend to not think about these things. You just want to make it happen somehow. But
Yeah.
then when you do progress and you do make money and build the business you want to build, you slowly start realizing that it's actually a lot more important than you think it is, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I agree.
That ties into another topic that I find very interesting. Would you say that making money or making more money is something that is still driving you, or is it none of that at all anymore?
Yeah, so like everyone wants to make more money, right? Like like even billionaires, they all want to make more money. Even you could say the billionaires, like they have a even bigger fear because they might lose it all, right? So I don't know where I heard this story. I'm not sure who told it, but oh, it was his name is Andrew Wilkinson. He's got a company called Tiny. He's like the Warren Buffett of the tech world. That's what they call him. And he said that he's in rooms with like very, very big people, billions of dollars, Forbes list people. And then this one guy is worth like $8 billion, right? And he's jealous of Jeff Bezos. And Andrew Wilkinson is like, yo, why are you jealous? I mean, you've got $8 billion. You're living an amazing life. And then the guy was like, Jeff Bezos can buy a super yacht. So there's always like these games that people play. But yeah, so money definitely drives me, but I wouldn't say it's the main motivator. In the beginning, it was. I was like, it was coming almost from a dark place, just like greed. It's like you just want to make money. That's like what drives everyone at the beginning. But now it's a lot less so, and more just about making progress. I would say that's my biggest motivation. I just like when I'm stagnant in any area of life, I just don't like that. So a good marker if you make progress in business is revenue is growing, right? So it's not that I'm really chasing the money; it's more just the progress, and the revenue is like a good proxy to really check if that's the case, if I'm still progressing.
Sure. That makes sense. Why do you feel like people tend to play these games at any level? Why do you feel like that never stops?
Yeah, that's a good question. I feel like people are always trying to play games. Even when we were younger, like we always would play games. And as you grow older, you just play more sophisticated games. When you're younger, let's say, in like a high school, you play the games of getting brownie points from your teachers or getting good grades, playing that game. And then you play the social hierarchy game in your high school, and then you play like the college game, and then after that you play like the house game, just getting like a mortgage and then a wife. So you're always like playing games. I feel like when everything is kind of just like you don't know what the meaning of life in a sense is. You are like creating your own meaning. You just want to play games essentially. It's just to entertain yourself because at the end of the day, like people can really do whatever they want. So if it's not entertaining, they're not going to do it.
That's very interesting. I saw that you are running a community, as I was talking about before, and the community is called the School of Athens, right?
So we actually recently did a rebrand from the School of Athens to Founders Acquisition. So that's now the community name.
Gotcha. That makes sense. Why did you make that rebrand?
Yeah, so like the name, the School of Athens. So that's our podcast, right? And that's like the umbrella brand name. So that's where everything is gonna fall under, right? It's a bit more broad. But when we named the community the School of Athens, it's like you can say it's like a make money online type of product. Sorry about that. And when people join that, they don't exactly know what they're getting. So like the School of Athens, people might know it's like a philosophical brand, discourse between ideas. That's good for the podcast, but for the actual community where we are trying to help people make money mainly, like that's the main thing. And we also teach, health and wealth because we feel like both go together. The healthier you are, the more energy you have, the, more deals you'll close, the more money you'll make, all of that. So, that ties in with the School of Athens, but founders acquisition, it's more tangible in the sense like people know what they're getting. Like, it's founders, people trying to make money, which is founders is usually related. I think that's the right word to business and making money. And acquisition, like we all know, is also, getting clients, client acquisition. So it's more clear. And we were trying to be too fancy. And like Alex Emoji says, simple scales, fancy files. So we're trying to be more simple in that sense.
Gotcha. What would you say is your vision for that platform that you're building?
So the community, the ultimate vision for that is so at the moment we are focused a lot on South Africans, and it might change in the future. But business is a lot like war. So this is like my interpretation of it. So like I said, business is a lot like war, and people are trying to go global before they've even conquered in a sense their own country. So if they haven't even got their own marketplace, like their own country clients from there, where you have like a specific advantage, right? Because you are obviously from that country. I don't know, people are trying to go global too quickly. I see a lot of startup advice where, they say go to very, very niche at the beginning, very niche, because, then you can like build feedback and all of these things, and then you can go global. So the main vision at the moment is to help South Africans, make money online. Like that's the biggest, like I would say, 2-year vision at the moment. It might scale, it might change, but at the moment it's that because there's a big, big opportunity, especially for third world countries in general, right? Because the marketplace has opened up so much. Everyone is working remote, right? So especially South Africans, the time zone is perfect, with like Europe and that kind of thing. We speak English. We're very disciplined people. We can understand the languages. Accent isn't that bad. And people in general love South Africans. Elon Musk is South African. Like, we're very, very hardworking people. Even the first heart surgery was done in South Africa. So, people love South Africans. So I feel like there's a big, big opportunity for them. And especially when it comes to the conversion rate. So from dollar to rand, at the moment, like if you earn $2,000 from a client, which isn't that difficult to do, right? You can make 40,000 Rand in South Africa. And, the top 1% in South Africa makes 60,000 Rand. So if you're earning $3,000 a month, you're in the top 1% of, I would say, like the best country in the world.
That's interesting. You said that that's the 2-year vision, right? What would you say is your 10 to 20-year vision?
Wow. Yeah, I don't really look that far ahead, to be honest. I only do, well, to be really honest, I only look like the next 24 hours. Like that's just the week out is where I look the most. But I also have a very, very long time horizon. I'm extremely patient, but I'm also very short-term urgent. Like I even took personality tests. I'm like literally 100% patient. Like I'm extremely patient. But I am very, very short-term, action right now type of man. So, don't really have like a 20-year vision for the company or anything like that. I just know the podcast is going to do well in the next 5 years or so. But I can't really like technology and AI is going to change so many things. Like I can only look like maximum even 1 year ahead.
Okay, gotcha. So you said that although you're extremely patient, you're focused on taking action at a high pace every single time. And you said that you're mainly really focused most times on the next 24 hours, which, bro, Andro, I completely agree with you on that. And because it's same thing for me. But do you feel like it's a good thing that we're not looking out further into the future and planning ahead?
Yeah, so that's a good question. You obviously need to look into the future. Like that's where saving ultimately comes from. Like, people aren't saving as much as they should and all of that, because they're very short-term minded. And even Charlie Munger, who was Warren Buffett's business partner, he sadly died at 99. I think it was like a month before his 100th birthday. He said he didn't succeed because he was intelligent. He succeeded because he had a long attention span, which is actually, especially nowadays, people's attention span are so short. So you want to kind of have that long-term vision as well, or like just a long-term focus. But you can't really focus on the long term that much because it's constantly, especially now with AI and technology, it's changing so, so quickly. So your 5-year vision might be completely different when you actually get there, because of AI and all these things. So you want to stay adaptable, and you can only stay adaptable when you are focused like right now. So you want to kind of have both that split between both of them, between like long term and short term urgency. I live by that really, and most people struggle to hold two opposing beliefs, in their brain at the same time. People struggle with that a lot. Some people are either extremely patient and then they say, "Oh, it will work out," and then they do nothing, or they are, extremely urgent right now and they don't have an ounce of, idea what's going on in the future. So just like,
Well,
short-term greed, instant gratification, that kind of thing.
for the person that's in that sense very focused on short-term greed, instant gratification, etc., that's constantly in this cycle of only doing what feels good in the moment, but they find it hard to break out of that pattern. What would you advise them to do? How do you break that pattern?
Read books. That's number one. That's definitely because it's like a meditation practice in of itself. People aren't reading at nearly as much as they should. And I just love Charlie Munger. Like I just like studied his quotes, and he said he didn't know a single person on earth, like no wise person is ever known, right? And from wisdom really comes everything you want, like wealth and all of that. He didn't know a single person who didn't read all the time, like all the time. And also he would read, biographies on biographies, and he even said the highest ROI activity, right? And this is Warren Buffett's business partner, is reading biographies. Warren Buffett would read 600 pages a day. Elon Musk, there's a story from his sister that came out that said he read 2 books a day when he was growing up. Bill Gates takes think weeks every single year, like 2 weeks where he just reads. Jeff Bezos, his first store was an Amazon store. And even Ty Lopez, he asked Elon Musk, like, how do you learn to build rockets? He said he bought books and studied them, right? So all these successful people read a lot, right? A lot. So I would definitely recommend that because it's difficult to focus, and that also creates that long-term focus as well because you're gonna divert, you're gonna be distracted, and then you need to get back to the book. Might be a bit more tactical. I'm naturally patient, so it's difficult for me to really share some strategies because I'm just naturally good at that. But I would say books is really like the biggest thing that has helped me as well.
That's very interesting. I actually almost wanted to hit you with a question about how to go about that because I'll tell you what, I am someone that I wouldn't say I struggle with reading books, but it's not necessarily something I do a lot just for the simple reason that every time I read a book, I feel super unproductive for some reason because it's
Yeah,
too slow. Like I
yeah,
like doing things with efficiency and it feels too slow. And so I don't do it much. But for someone like me or someone in a situation where they know reading books is good, but they just really struggle with themselves to get over it, right? And this by the way applies to anything in life. How can you actually take that step and just go ahead and do it? Like how do you stop overthinking and take action immediately? What would you say
yeah.
to that?
So yeah, on the book reading part, you don't have to read that much. Like, you don't need to read like all day. For example, when I was back at my old, my older place, I would literally, let's say, work from 8 till 12, and then I would take a walk, like a 45-minute walk, then I would listen to an audiobook. So that's listening, which is also fine. But I still, the better one is still actual physical reading. So I would listen to audiobooks there while I'm driving. I would also listen to audiobooks while I'm at the gym actually as well, doing cardio, and then 2 hours before bed or like an hour and a half before bed. So it's not like you know, you only need to read like 2 hours a day, and that already puts you in the top 0.001% of readers if you read 2 hours a day. And that's all you need. So that's basically just like the last 2 hours before bed. And that's all you really need. Because you don't really want to scroll on your phone then, right? Because it's just going to stimulate your brain. Or you can just read on your Kindle. That's also a very, very good idea because it doesn't have the blue light.
Interesting. I have a question for you there, Andro. So you obviously, as most people have probably seen by now, are pretty thoughtful and strategic. But at the same time, and you mentioned this earlier, you are someone that moves pretty quickly and is able to do things at a high pace. How do you balance that action with introspection, would you say?
That's a good question. So I don't introspect nearly as much as I should, like, the journaling and all of that. I've definitely kept up my meditation practice. Like I've been consistently doing that every single day for the past, I would say, 3 years now, like every single day. I've missed like a weekend or so, like a week while I was holiday, but pretty consistently over the past 3 years, every single day, 20 minutes. So that's like my introspection that helps. That's like if you compare it to the average individual, that's amazing, right? Amazing. But not, I don't want to like compare anything like that. I'm just saying statistic wise, right? So that gives a lot of introspection. Also reading, that helps a lot. Doing personality tests, that also helps a lot. And just being still in general, I think you give your mind time to process. So let's say I've got a lot of my on my mind or just thinking a lot, I would just walk without, listening to an audiobook or listening to a podcast or whatever. And that helps a ton because people are just constantly feeding themselves with information. So if you just like sit down or just like walk with nothing, just like in nature, that then your subconscious start to process things. That's why these shower thoughts happen because that's the only place when people don't use their phone. So that's when they actually get these good ideas because your brain starts to process everything that all this information that you fed it. So, and then it can actually think. So silence, it's amazing. I even know Sam Harris and Naval Ravikant, they would meditate for like an hour a day. And I know a lot of people that do that. So just like being still for an hour, and that's very, very difficult, especially now in like this age of distraction and all that. Um, but hopefully that answers your question.
Sure, it does.
And yeah, I forgot to mention on the short term or like the action part, like balancing those two. Um, yeah, I just know, just like that's why I mentioned in the beginning, I focus a lot on the next 24 hours. I don't really look, too much in the future. So when I've only got the next 24 hours, I'm constantly, and it's kind of, you know, it's not good for me because I'm constantly saying like, how can I be as most productive in the next 60 minutes? Like that's what I'm constantly asking myself. Like, what is gonna in the next 60 minutes, what can I do that will be the most productive? And that creates a lot of anxiety as well. But that's like just how I'm wired in a sense. So yeah, I just got both of those. It's difficult to explain though.
I get that. No, that makes sense. Okay. I feel like that's a very, very interesting thing to talk about because business is like running a marathon. When you start the marathon, though, you're overweight. And whilst you're running the marathon, you have to lose weight. Does that make
Yeah.
sense?
So while you're running, you are losing weight, right? Isn't that?
Yeah, in a sense. So, what the quote essentially means is that when you're starting out in business, you just immediately have to start doing things. And whilst you're doing the things, you kind of have to learn how to do it.
Oh,
It's
I see
like
what you mean.
starting to run a marathon, being severely overweight, and at the finish line, you have to have a six pack. Maybe that's a better
Mm.
way to put it.
Yeah, so basically it's just a ton of work. That's basically what that means. Yeah.
Pretty much.
I hear a lot of people that say, if they knew how much work they had to put in for their business and their company, they would rethink of being an entrepreneur. Like that delusional feeling you have at the beginning, like you can do it all before you even started, right? That feeling, it's kind of a good thing as well because you really don't know how much work is ahead of you. But there's a lot of biases that's already in play, like the sunk cost fallacy. So you're already, 2, 3 years in the game. You can't quit now, right? So you might as well just push through it, and just like continue doing it. But if people knew how much work lied ahead of them, they would think twice before becoming an entrepreneur. And it looks so flashy, obviously, but literally 99% of the time, we're just working.
Okay, I have a very interesting question for you there because I completely agree with your statement. Would you say that everybody can become an entrepreneur?
No, I wouldn't say so. Um, Well, in a sense, everyone is already in business, right? Even if you're working for a company, you're working, like as an employee, like you are still in business because being in business is like um essentially modern day survival, right? Because you are making money and you use that money for food. Like everyone is in business if they know it or not. Like every single person on this planet is in business, okay? So everyone is technically an entrepreneur, but some people are just working for companies, but I don't think everyone can really become an entrepreneur. You have this thing of an intrapreneur, that's someone who's working in a company that's not taking as much risk. But, just like genetically speaking, not everyone is as risk averse. I think that's the right one, where they can take a lot of risk. It's like genetically hardwired in some people. It can be from their past. It can be, just like something that happened to them or just like a goal they have. They are just like genetically hardwired to take more risks. Like that is part of their DNA. And not everyone has that. Most people of the world don't have that. Like 80% of people, I'm not sure how many entrepreneurs there are actually. I need to check the stat on that. You know how many entrepreneurs are in the world, like percentage wise?
Not necessarily, but if I had to guess, I would say it's probably less than so of first world countries, right? If we look at first world countries, I would say it's less than 10% of the population,
Yeah, I was
I would
also
say.
thinking around like 10, less than that. So statistically speaking, 90% of people aren't as risk averse. So they want to be more safe. But also nowadays it's becoming less and less safe with AI and all these things. So it is pretty tough. It is tough out there. So that's why you just need to, stay adaptable, work as hard as possible, constantly learn, educate yourself. Yeah, that's like the best piece of advice I can really give you.
But how do you know whether you're that type of person or not? Because for me
Oh,
personally, for example, I would say I'm pretty good at taking risks, if you can call
yeah.
it that. but I didn't know that when I started out with entrepreneurship. So how would someone know whether they're actually able to take risks that they need to take to grow or not?
Yeah, that's a good question. I have a pretty good answer for that. So, if you are unsure whether let's say you are thinking of becoming an entrepreneur and you're unsure, you're probably not. And if you really know, you deep down know, then you'll know. So it's a kind of a catch-22. But if you know type of thing. If you're uncertain and you're like, oh, I don't know, then you're probably not because you need to really know. And it's not something I can like explain to you verbally. It's just like a gut feeling that you have that you just know you can't work for someone else. You just have this internal feeling that you are going to take risks. You are going to start with this company. It's going to work out. I feel like it's just an internal feeling. And whether that's, something that happened in the past or just like environment, nature, nurture type of thing, I don't know, but you would really just know. You would be certain. So if you're uncertain, you're probably not.
Great answer. That makes a lot of sense. Where would you say you see the future of AI? You just touched on it briefly. Can you elaborate on that a bit?
Yeah, so I've been doing quite a lot of research, more on the optimism side of AI actually. So not too much research on like the AI doomers, but if AI works out, it's gonna be everyone's gonna become wealthy essentially because wealth, when people hear the word wealth, they think of money. But what wealth really is the car you drive, it's the food you can buy, it's what money can buy. That is wealth. It's the phone in your pocket. It's the camera. It's this monitor I'm using. It's this apartment. That is wealth. It's not like don't think of yachts and Bugattis and don't think of that. Just think of what money can buy. That's wealth. So when robots, I'm jumping the cart before the horse here, but if robots take over everything, right, and they're doing all the like manual work, all that is left is wealth. So we're gonna be extremely wealthy and are gonna live in a very prosperous society in the next like I would say even 10 years.
You know what I think, bro? And this is something that I also talked about recently, and I think this makes so much sense. And a lot of people are going to disagree with me, but I don't really care. I feel like most people, actually, no, generally speaking, humans, in my opinion, I don't think are made for regular 9 to 5 jobs. But what I mean by that is not that they're not made to work 8 hours a day or something like that. I actually believe work is a fundamental part of life and it has to be done either way. What I mean by that is everything that's repetitive labor, everything that's non creative activities aren't necessarily something that humans are made for because all of those will be replaced by robots and AI. So, what humans truly have to do is leverage their creativity to make the world a better place and create wealth, which is exactly what you just described. Would you agree with that statement? How do you see that from your perspective?
Oh yeah, I totally agree with everything you said there. I think truly the I read this cool tweet that said we are entering the era of the thinker, which is pretty cool. I like that. So the best ideas are going to win now because essentially the barrier to entry for everything is going to be so low that just with an idea you can make something. So let's say a website, for example. There's going to be an AI like in the next 5 years, like probably 2 years, where you can just put an idea on like a let's say a website GPT, just put the idea out there and then it's going to create the website, right? So the coders and all of those people, the skill is pretty cool, but it's not worth spending like a decade of your life trying to learn to code because it's just the robots are going to take care of that. And you can even say robots are here already. Like when you send out a tweet and it gets distributed to let's say 10 million people, like Elon Musk's tweet, like how on earth does that even happen? Like we have no idea how, like you just click a few things on this crazy plastic device, and then that idea gets distributed to 10 million people and it changes their lives. That's already robots. We're already in that era, right? So essentially, when it comes to that, the best, let's take that quote that said, or that tweet that said, we're entering the era of the thinker. So if you have a very good idea for a tweet and you spread that out, that can go viral by its own because it resonates with so much people and it's more creative. So creativity is really, I think, the next. Uh, it's difficult to really, teach or learn creativity, but I feel like that's the new skill coming into this era.
So it's difficult to teach or learn, but how can you, or how can one channel that creativity onto the thing they want to achieve? How do you do it personally?
Yeah, good question. So what I do is I just like pour so much information in my brain through books and podcasts and audiobooks. Just like I'm constantly educating myself while I'm cooking food. I'm listening to something before I go. Like I'm constantly educating myself with articles, with books, with all of that. And then just through that, you get good ideas because you can't. Ideas are like the output, right? But if you don't have good inputs coming in, how are you actually going to create good output, which is the ideas? And that's creativity. Creativity, all that is just a bunch of ideas that's connected and like it forms something new. It's like this idea connected with this idea, and then boom, there's like a new idea. I don't have like a practical example at the moment. But that's essentially what creativity is like. Is like merging ideas together, right? That's essentially what creativity is. Just coming up with something new. And the only way to do that is to just educate yourself as much as possible from different sources.
Makes a lot of sense. I feel as though with ideation or the ideation process, it's something that needs to be natural and you can channel it through learning. That makes a lot of sense. Would you say, or do you believe that AI can learn to become creative as well? Because if we have the theory that creativity is just you taking in a lot of information and then funneling all of those ideas into creating a new one, don't you think that AI can do that as well?
Oh yeah, AI is already extremely creative because it's talking to I think 100 million people a week. Like weekly users, 100 million people. So it's already got so much ideas and basically said creativity is just like the merging of a couple ideas from different, sources. Creativity isn't this thing that's like my some people say it's like comes from the ether and like that kind of thing. But if it's just more practical, just like ideas, ChatGPT is already extremely creative, and people are already using that for ideas and like YouTube titles and like all of these things, testing new stuff. So it's already extremely creative.
What leverage do humans then have over AI? If the main thing that makes up humans is creativity and, for example, emotions or having your emotions influence your ideas, what's the real differentiator then between humans and AI, would you say?
Hmm, that's a good question. The main differentiator. At the moment, a human still has to control the AI. Like you still have to prompt it. So I think Naval said this that, chat or like AI is not going to take over your job. Someone using AI is going to take over your job, right? So that's still our main leverage point is that we can use our ideas and our creativity and just essentially make it even better and faster and all these things. Just by, for example, Steve Jobs said that the MacBook is just like a bicycle for your for your brain, right? So it just makes it better. You can be more creative. AI is the exact same. I just feel like it's like a motorbike for your brain. So you can literally just like think of, in the future, you will literally think something and then AI will already go prompt stuff and, go on its own. So at the moment, we still need to prompt it. So that's like the biggest leverage point. But as AI becomes smarter and smarter, it will just think on its own. So then I don't know what's the differentiator.
Interesting. How do you personally leverage AI in your business then? It's obviously very clear that leveraging and using AI in your company to grow it, to scale it, et cetera, is one of the main or is going to be one of the main differentiating factors between businesses that die slowly and businesses that thrive in the next few years. So how do you personally implement it and how do you stay on top of it every day?
Mm, yeah, that's good. So, yeah, I use it for a ton of things, like literally everything. So, doing research for my modules, creating the modules as well. You know, when people say, I don't know how I feel about this when, it's like, oh, AI wrote this book or something like that. People they still kind of like the human touch to like, let's say a book. Um, so yeah, but the way I'm using it is I'm just talking to it constantly, so it has a lot of data on me. And like the memory is insane. They're constantly rolling out updates where you are literally going to talk to, let's say, ChatGPT, and in 20 years you can ask them, yo, how was my thinking patterns back when I was 22, right? You can ask ChatGPT that and it will remember. So that's pretty insane. The memory is going to be crazy. So staying on top of it is literally just talking to ChatGPT constantly. I'm using it for, the modules, doing research on the modules. Here's the thing, like I can still do research. People say, "Oh, that's cheating," whatever. That's the weirdest thing ever. Because let's say I, do research on, like the manual way and just taking forever. It will take me like 3 hours to go through all the, scientific research. And, at the moment I'm creating like a week on sales, right? So like a module, like 6 modules on sales. So I can just ask ChatGPT deep research, give me like, the best, I don't know, ideas you have on sales on this specific topic. It takes 10 minutes, gives me all of the research documents. I can go through it myself and then craft it. So it would have taken me like 3 hours to go through it myself, and I can now do it in 10 minutes. So it's just saving me a lot of time, even with ads, because it knows me so well. It knows my target audience. It knows my clients. It knows all of that. So you can just ask to even, write ads, scripts, all of that, and just obviously make, do your final touches with it. But like the main bulk work, AI can already do.
When do you feel like the first billion-dollar business will be created by one single person?
I think it's already done, isn't it?
Really?
I think
By
so.
who?
Yeah. So I asked someone that question. Like it was like a sauna in the sauna, and I asked him like, "Oh, when do you think's the first one-person billion-dollar company?" He said, "Oh, it's already happened." I think it's someone. I'm not sure exactly who the name is, but there was like I think a $6 or $2 billion company from 4 people already. I think Midjourney. There's like 4 people who made that.
That's insane. It's a very interesting process because obviously your margins skyrocket because you just
Oh
literally
yeah.
have no fixed costs, close to no fixed costs. And it's a very, very interesting direction we're heading into. I want to switch to a different topic. So, what I find very interesting, obviously, you spoke about it before, you're based in South Africa, and that's where you grew up as well, and where you still actively live. How would you say your actual background has shaped the way you believe, think, act, and the way you live your life? What positive and also what negative influences did that have on you?
Mm. So coming from South Africa, um, I've traveled quite a lot last year, but it's difficult to really say what, let's say, a specific country or like your home country, what effect that had on you if you can't contrast it to anything, right? Like let's say another country, for example. I did travel, Bali was very, very amazing experience. Like people are just so happy there. It's insane. Like they're just all friendly, all smiling. It's amazing culture there. But just on my own personal experience, um, as I said, like the top 1% in South Africa make $3,000 a month, right? Like that's top 1%. And on average, people make $1,000 a month. And that's like, it's probably even less if you just put like the entire South Africa. But let's say like middle class around there, like let's say fresh out of college, you're making around $1,000 a month. Okay, so when you're making like as a 21-year-old 20 times that, that's kind of insane. But also I don't really spend it as much. Like I'm not really very materialistic. I literally, took the test. I'm like 56% motivated by material things. So 56%. I'm probably still gonna get like a nice Rolex and stuff like that, but I'm not motivated by material things. Okay, so I like more freedom. That's like my biggest one, and also mastery. So getting extremely good at my craft. And I know this doesn't quite answer your question, but I feel like it's still a important, tangent. You need to know what motivates you. So as I said, for me, it's freedom. And that's why I traveled quite a lot, experiences, that kind of thing. Autonomy, being able to make my own decisions. That's also a part of freedom. And then also mastery. So I'm very, very big on mastery. I just want to become as good as I possibly can in my craft. That's just like, that comes back to progress, right? I just want to make progress in my field. So but yeah, like it didn't really change much, to be honest. That's probably the biggest takeaway. I can't really think of anything. That probably means it didn't change much. Like people didn't treat me differently. I was still the same. Nothing really changed. My parents didn't really care. I took them to Thailand. That was pretty cool. But after a week, it's like things are back to normal. So it was the exact same, really. Like nothing really changed, which is I kind of like.
I know that we have a lot of people watching that obviously want to grow their business, want to make more money, want to kind of know the way, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Out of those strengths that you said that you're not really motivated by materialistic things, you're motivated by mastery, et cetera. What would you say, which one of those traits has led to the most growth in your life? Which has served you the most?
Yeah. So what do you mean by traits? Like, which traits?
So you said that you are mainly motivated by, for example, mastery, and you're
Okay.
motivated by freedom. That's a character trait, right? You're not necessarily bound, or you're not necessarily looking at materialistic things and thinking, oh, that Lambo, I want to drive it. That's why I'm working hard.
Oh yeah.
Which of those would you say drove you the most, which helped you the most on your path to growing your business, scaling, making more money, and seeing the success that you want to see?
Yeah, so the biggest thing really for me was just autonomy. So then I would say probably freedom. That was the biggest one in the beginning. It's just because I just couldn't, like most people listening to this probably relate. I just couldn't listen to anyone else. Like I couldn't, like in school, I kind of had the typical story where it's like, I didn't do too well. Well, I did decently. I got like, 70% and stuff like on my test, but I wasn't interested in it, right? Like I always like a day, 2 days before I would start learning. But now, as you can hear from this podcast, I'm constantly educating. I love education. I've got like a bookshelf there of like 20 books, just like constantly reading. My Kindle is packed. So I love education, but I think Einstein or something said this: you can never force someone to learn. You can only inspire them to learn. And a pretty big inspiration for me at the beginning was Iman Gadzhi, actually. But with him, for example, he is motivated by material things, and that's totally fine. That is just his DNA code. Like, there's nothing wrong with that. If you're motivated by material things, like, use what you've got, right? If you want to get like on my vision board, I had like the Audi R8, and all the cars and stuff like that because that kind of motivated me. But as I got the money to purchase that, it didn't. I didn't have that spark anymore. And now, once I got most of the money that can, satisfy those needs, I think also your motivation changes. And now mine is just mastery, making progress. And as a result, I will probably make even more money, but that's not the main objective. So I think the biggest one in the beginning that, helped me was autonomy, just being able to do what I want to do every single hour of my day.
For sure. I mean, Andrew, a lot of what we're talking about is success and mainly obviously financial success, but generally speaking, also success in life. What would you say for yourself? What would you say success looks like to you?
Yeah, so I would say success. I was just recently talking to this about this topic with Quentin, my business partner in the founders acquisition and also School of Athens, like a podcast host. Um, and I feel like success is where you balance all four aspects of life. So it's not just money. You can be a billionaire, but you can't get out of bed. Like I wouldn't take that. So he's got like the most money. He's won the money game, but like he's out of shape. Let's say he doesn't have a wife that loves him, doesn't have kids. I would say that's a failure in my personal opinion, right? So this is obviously, just my personal opinion. So for me, it's where you balance four areas, right? It's where you have enough money, right? And you are healthy as well. So health, wealth, love, and happiness. So I'll just unpack all four. So wealth is the definition, for me is where that's actually a good question. I'm trying to ask myself a question. But wealth is where you can essentially your investments, your yearly investment covers your burn, like your expenses, right? So where you don't technically have to work more, your investments covers your yearly expenses essentially. That's wealth in my opinion. And then it's health. So just being, healthy, going to the gym 5 days a week, and also having the time to do that. That's also wealthy in my sense. So you actually have time to go to the gym. If you just, if you want to work 12 hours a day, sure. But if you have to work 12 hours a day, that's also not success in my opinion. And then love, which it falls into friends, family, and romance. So obviously your wife and that kind of thing. And then happiness. If you can have everything, health, wealth, love, happiness is kind of a byproduct, but still, you still need to work on that calmness. I think Naval said the only things money can't buy is a fit body, a house full of love, and a calm mind. So you still need to work on those three things, and money can't really do that. So it's like a holistic approach, and I feel like that's even harder than just like going monk mode on one thing.
How can you work on those things, having a calmer mind, etc., etc. Because I think when we were in Greece last year, you also said this, and we talked about this briefly, and it made a lot of sense to me back then, and still does. Where you said that it's very easy to work for 12 hours a day every day. It's pretty hard to work for 6, 7, 8 hours, or maybe it's 4 hours, and then afterwards spend time with family, friends, etc., because it's very hard to switch from one thing to the other.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you
So
still find it hard?
so in an ideal world, right? It's obviously four buckets: health, wealth, love, happiness. In an ideal world, you've got 16 hours, awake time, 8 hours of sleep, in the 24-hour day. So in 16 hours, it literally breaks down perfectly 4 hours each. So 4 hours on your wealth. Even Ty Lopez said that, the number he's aiming for is 3 hours a day. So you don't want to, work 12 hours a day. If you want to, obviously, you can do whatever you want. But just me, for example, you want to make as much money in 3 hours every single day as humanly possible. So at the moment, I'm working, well, everything is really work, but let's just say, just like working on my business is like, 4 hours on my, the school community. And then I've usually got like, 2, 3 calls a day. So that's like, another, let's say 2.5 hours. So it's like, 6 hours or so. And then, but ideally, you split it up into all four. So you kind of want to have these constraints and these boundaries. So you say, after 12, I'm done with that work. I'm not doing it. I'm not even looking at it. Okay. And then you do 4 hours on health. Boom. You're done with that. You've done all your steps. You've got your 10K steps in. You hit the workout. You're eating healthy. And that also all counts into health. And then you can spend time with friends, family, going out to dinners, maybe dating or so. And then, yeah. But the one thing I would sacrifice in my 20s is happiness, just to boil up the other three.
Do you think that that's a never-ending game? That you're always sacrificing happiness for the sake of getting something else?
Yeah. Um, but for most people, I read this amazing newsletter from Chris Williamson actually. And it's like he said, well, like type A people is like, very driven people like you and myself, is like very driven. You're always delaying gratification. And I heard this amazing quote in that newsletter that said, well, I read it and it said, the extreme of delayed gratification is no gratification. So that, so if you constantly delay gratification forever, you're gonna live a life with no gratification. And that's not a life I want to live, like with no gratification. Like, what's the point of that? I at least want to have some fun as well. So it's like you've just completed the marshmallow game. You've never ate a marshmallow. It's like, and also you don't want to delay until like your 60s and just like indulge completely, right? So it is a balance. It's very difficult. It's a balance. Like with most things, it's never black and white. It's always like this gray area that it's murky and it's difficult to explain. So when it comes to like the marshmallow test, for example, you don't want to wait 60 years and have 10,000 marshmallows at once, That doesn't sound like a good like that's just terrible. So I would say, wait like maybe a year and eat 10 marshmallows rather than wait like 5 minutes and get a half a marshmallow every single time, Because then it's just gonna be like you're just gonna get used to it. After every 5 minutes you get a half a marshmallow. But wait like, well, no, this is not a perfect example, but you wait like a year and then you're gonna get 10 marshmallows, and then it's just gonna you're gonna feel that more, that excitement and that joy. So for example, you don't go out and party every single night. You maybe do every 10 days or something, and then it's more fun. So that's like a balance between the happiness, and the delayed gratification and instant gratification.
Do you ever think to yourself, because this is something that I know from a lot of my clients, for example, and obviously we're then diving into that, and also something that I've struggled with myself in the past. Do you ever think to yourself, is it really worth it to delay the gratification that I want, the food that I want, I don't know, free time that I want right now for just getting this one more thing done? Because it's always one more thing, in the back of your mind,
Yeah.
you know that it's not going to be like you're just going to sit there, do something for 10 minutes and then stop. You know that if you go ahead and do it, you're going to do it for a couple hours. How do you know when to stop?
Oh, like that. Yeah, it's difficult. It's very difficult. That's why everyone is really struggling with that, right? If it was easier, like everyone would, have the answer. But even Andrew Wilkinson, who I talked about earlier, he wrote a book called Never Enough. And that example of the billionaire is like, oh, I'm jealous of Jeff Bezos because he can buy a super yacht, right? So
That's
it's a
crazy,
very
bro.
difficult, yeah, it's a very difficult thing to really, you know, do. That's why so many people struggle with it, and that's also why I think it's a very, very good pursuit to go down. Trying to figure out like what's the good balance from delayed gratification and instant gratification, and finding out that balance for yourself. Because I also feel like it's personal as well. Your level of satisfaction and how long you can delay things and everything like that.
For sure. I have a question in that regard, but it's still a bit of a different topic. What do you think would make you yourself right now proud in 20 years from now, looking back at today?
Hmm. Yeah, that's a good question. Um, what will make my like let's say 40-year-old self or like 43-year-old whatever proud of what I did today?
Yes.
Um, it's basically that I gave it my all in all aspects. I wasn't fearful. I feel like more courageous. Um, when you feel like you do something, not let fear stop you if you know it's the right reason, and not let fear stop you because you don't want to really live life with regrets, right? Um, but you're always going to have regrets. That's the thing. It's just, let's say, for example, you can either, you know, stay inside and, read a book, whatever, or you can go out to a club and, have a couple of drinks. Either way, you just want to choose the one that you're going to regret the least, right? So let's say you go to the club, you're gonna be like, oh, I should have stayed in. I could have got an early night, early morning, go to the gym, that type of thing. But if you go out partying and clubbing, let's say take a couple drinks, whatever, and then you come back like 2 a.m., you're not gonna have a good workout the next morning. So you, in the long term, you wanna see which one you're gonna regret the least. So also feel like it's good to go out every now and then, right? Like every weekend or so. Like nothing wrong with that. But what would make my 40-year-old proud is that I wouldn't, be. It's not that I am fearful, but I'm not fearful at all, right? Because especially in the modern world, like the worst thing that can ever happen to you is like nothing really. Like like nothing. There's absolutely nothing bad that can happen to you, despite like jail. But you just want to avoid that. Other than going to jail, like there's nothing that you should really be fearful of. Like the worst thing ever, really, is like you lose your business, you move in back with your parents in the first world country. If you have that, like you should be extremely grateful for that. And then you can just start over again. Like that's the worst thing that can happen. So just being less fearful, essentially.
For sure. Do you feel like you've had to face that problem in the past? So over the last few years since you started in business or even in self-development, did you have to overcome yourself and overcome that fear? So now you're at the point where you can say, I don't care anymore, or was that always the way you were?
So Carl Jung has this cool quote where he says that where your fear is, there is your task. So wherever you feel like everyone feels fear, right? So where you feel the most fear, there you should, go. Like if you are, let's say, for example, let's say you're starting out in your business and you are fearful of like sourcing all these emails and like, sending all these emails to people and doing the follow-ups. Like you just not fearful, but you're not very excited to do it. Let's just say that that is probably where your task is. Like that is probably what you should do right now. So it's a constant struggle. Not struggle, but it's a constant challenge. So I'm constantly doing something that I'm fearing, essentially, because if it's not fearful, then it's not growing you, right? If it's not challenging you, it's not growing you. So I'm constantly facing my fears in a sense. It's not like this existential fear that I'm gonna die or something. It's just like this minor discomfort that, oh, I don't want to do 5 hours of deep work right now. That's probably what you should be doing right now if you want the rewards you're looking for in the future. So it's just like a constant challenge to face your fears and discomforts.
But if we're looking at bigger risks, right? So, say, for example, a major investment for the company that could either fuck everything up completely or skyrocket the business, how do
Yeah.
you know what risk to take and what risk not to take?
Yeah, that's a good question because that's actually something I'm literally going through right now, like, today. Well, not today, but like in the next week or so. So we're gonna start rapidly doing some ads. So just like massively expanding the business. So that is, it's not like an existential thing, but like it's still fearful, right? Like you can spend thousands of dollars and get nothing in return. Like that can definitely happen. So you obviously don't want that. But it's like a risk I'm willing to take. So it all comes down to your personality and how much risk you can take. But at least, have something left in the bank after, you don't want to spend all your money and you can't pay your employees, right? So you want to take, what's it, calculated risks. That's the right one.
Do you feel like the more risk you take, the more successful you become?
Yes, definitely. But also the more risk you take, the higher chance you can, wipe everything out. That's also the thing. So there's a direct correlation between how successful someone is and how much risks they took, direct, but also, they might have misstepped or just like slightly, I think misstep is the right word, or avoided the existential risk where they might have lost everything. And even Tesla, or I think it was SpaceX, like he was weeks away from just like losing everything, just like couldn't pay payroll and stuff like that. Like he did like three rocket launches, and if this fourth one or whatever didn't launch, or the third one, he would have lost everything. So that's a big risk, but in that part it paid off. Like it was like a literally let's say a 20% success rate or chance of success, but he got that 20%, So at a certain point, the risk can really take you out completely. But you should just, yeah, if that's obviously personality wise, like how big of risk can you take? Because even starting a business is pretty risky, right? I think 90% of businesses fail, right? So you have a 10% success rate. That's pretty risky already. So, but the thing is, that's why I also say for people when they're as young as possible to take as many risks as possible because you have no responsibilities. You like, as I mentioned, the worst thing that can happen is you move back with your parents and you start over again with nothing, right? So once you've got kids, once you've got a mortgage, once you've got, college you're paying for, the cars, all of these loans, debt, like you can't really take any risks. You can't. That's why I say, as young as possible, take as many risks as possible. That's ultimately what I did.
That's very good advice, my friend.
Thank you.
Do you feel like risk leads to success more than hard work and consistency? What do you feel like is the most important factor in those three?
Hard work, consistency, or risk.
Mhm.
Well, that's actually a pretty good combo, to be honest. Um, I would say it's probably so. What's like the biggest lever mover from those three? I would say hard work is probably lost, right? And like Warren Buffett said, it doesn't matter how hard you row, it matters in which boat you're in, right? So it matters way more what you work on and who you work with than how hard you work, right? So hard work is probably lost. It's very, very important, but it's 25% of the equation of success, hard work. Um, the other four is actually scientifically proven. It's like, the it's like a test. I'm not quite sure, like a personality test. Conscientiousness is also big up there. Like that's the only scientific measurement of that correlates with wealth is conscientiousness. It's like the big five or something like that. But so the other ones are so hard work, consistency is also pretty high up there. I would say consistency is number one, and then risk taking is number two, and then hard work is number three. Yeah.
Interesting. So in regards to consistency, right? Do you ever have to force yourself to do the work? Do you ever feel like not doing it and you still decide to do it? Or is it something that you never really struggled with much?
So I definitely got a lot better in it than I previously started. But also, I think Alex Moses said that, you can solve a lot of problems like by getting in shape and getting rich. You still have the same problems, but you have more resources to fight them, right? So I started going to the gym 5 years, like half a decade before I started my business. So that obviously built a lot of discipline and consistency, which I can then translate over to my business. So I was extremely consistent with my business. Like I didn't literally, I think I skipped like one day of outreach when I started out in business because I haven't skipped like a single day in the gym in over like, 7 years. So I just like translated that skill over into business, which is pretty cool. And the thing is, what people really want, the reason I put consistency at number one is because consistency brings you compounding. And compounding is really the thing that people want. It's like compounding in your health, compounding in your wealth, compounding in your knowledge, relationships. If you've got a investor that you're doing business with for 50 years, like, that's compounding in relationships. So the biggest thing you want is compounding. But for compounding to take place, take Warren Buffett's net worth, for example, he was extremely consistent. So consistency brings compounding. But how do you get consistency? That's through discipline. Because discipline is really just like, resisting impulses. That's my definition of discipline, is resisting distractions and impulses that veer you off the goal and the mission, right? So if you're disciplined, you're going to be consistent. And if you're consistent, you're going to get the compounding results, which is the thing you really want.
For sure. And I mean, the thing is this, I do know that with a lot of people, especially if they're younger and trying to start businesses, et cetera, that's one of the biggest things they struggle with, and also something that I myself struggled with a lot. And for me personally, I do feel as though whenever I tried to force myself to get the work done, it never really worked out for longer than a couple days, maybe a week or two. But when I just focused on becoming the type of person that was enjoying the work that I'm doing, then it usually led to a lot of consistency without me having to force things constantly. Did you have the same experience, or is it really just willpower that is driving you when you don't
Yeah.
want to do things?
Yeah, good question. So in the beginning, it's a mostly willpower, I would say. Well, personally speaking, for me, it was just like straight up willpower. Especially from zero to $10,000 a month, it's straight up just willpower and pushing through it, because you don't have people to rely on. It's just you. You are doing all the emails, all the DMs, all the sales calls, all the service delivery. You are basically doing everything. From like 5K onwards, you can outsource. Then you have a team and stuff like that. But in the beginning, it's mostly willpower. And I truly feel like, passion and inspiration is very important. A lot of people say, oh, don't follow your passion, all these things. I feel like that's complete bullshit. I feel like passion is just still as important as as it was, like with Steve Jobs and all these people. Is, now with my agency, for example, I wasn't necessarily passionate. And that's the thing. I wasn't passionate at all. But with our founders acquisition, that product, I'm extremely passionate, because I'm working with, people who experience the same problems that I did. But in the beginning, I feel like it's mostly willpower, and then you can earn yourself to work on your passion. But it's very difficult, like, to blow up your passion in the beginning. That's like the chances of that is like 0.1%, and you don't really want to optimize for a 0.1% success rate. So what I always suggest is start an agency at the beginning. It's going to take a bit more willpower, but you're going to get passionate as you make a lot of money. Trust me. Then you're going to become passionate about making money. But then once you become passionate about the actual project, that's more, the info product in our example.
That makes a lot of sense. What would you say if you look at yourself? When did you start your business, roughly?
Um, 20,
20. Okay. And now you're how old? 23?
23. Yeah, a couple months
Gotcha.
ago.
So 3 years ago, roughly.
Yes.
What was the biggest mistake you made since you started your business? And would you want to avoid it? Or actually, would you want it to happen again so that you could learn from it better?
Yeah, that's a good question. So the biggest mistake, I can't really think of a mistake at the top of my head, to be honest. Um, yeah, I feel like everything happens exactly how it should, really. Even if you make the mistake, quote unquote, every single time, like that's still supposed to happen. Like I think Alex Moses said this thing where, you're gonna stay poor until you learn all the lessons that poverty has to teach you, right? So you're going to constantly face those mistakes in a sense, and those lessons. But I can't really think of any mistakes I made, to be honest. I would have probably, the biggest thing really is not, just business, but I wish, my biggest regret really is I wish I started reading sooner. Like at like, you know, like obsessively reading at like 12 or something. I started obsessively reading at 19, which is still, it's still good, but I wish I just started earlier. That's my only thing.
Gotcha. Okay, so reading is really the biggest one. I do feel as though you've probably heard this before. The best time to start was 20 years ago. The second best time is right now.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, that's very interesting. But you grew pretty fast in those 3 years. If someone would want to replicate the same process that you went through in terms of your financial success so far, what would you advise that person to do or focus on?
Yeah, so first off, I don't think anyone can really replicate anyone else. You know, you can use people as inspiration, but you can't replicate someone else's success. Like, it's because you are not that person. You like everything is just unique about you. You can like follow mentorship and stuff like that. I think that's extremely important. That's also how I scaled up so quickly is by following mentorship. But you still need to follow like your own intuition and your own decision making process, and just how the market is changing. And I feel like intuition really plays a big role. I don't see a lot of people talk about that, but I trust my gut quite a lot. That intuition. I operate a lot on intuition, and that might just be me just like educating myself a lot, and then I just have I'm extremely good at pattern recognition. So because I've educated myself so much, and pattern recognition allows me to spot trends. So then that helps me with like the long-term vision type of thing. So it's extremely unique to me. And I think the biggest piece of advice I would give someone is just to follow their natural curiosity and what they're naturally obsessed about. Because you can essentially nowadays, the internet has expanded the job market so much, people haven't realized it. Like you can literally make money in any single niche. So I feel like the best piece of advice is just follow your natural curiosity. And that will lead you to you making more money than you could ever, dream of.
I love that. Andrew, it was amazing to have you on. Thank you very much for being here and sharing value. And yeah, we gotta do another one very, very soon again.
Oh yeah, of course. You're very good at when it comes to the conversation. So I appreciate that. Very good at asking questions as well.
Appreciate it, bro. I appreciate it.